we'll communicate that to you. So so let's get to it. The first question that came through was, what are some cross-training activities and sports that you'd recommend and that would complement swimming and swim training? So the first thing I'm going to say is that, anything aerobic based that is longer duration, more cardiovascular, is that type of fitness oriented exercise. Who is it? So Pat and Sylvia, your mics are on, shows here.
I can't read that.
And Albert, okay, yours is good. All right. So anyway, anything cardiovascular is great. And with regards to exercises, anything that's pulling, rowing machines, chin-ups, rope climb, that sort of thing. If you're lucky enough to get a rowing machine and be able to go on that for 20, 25 minutes and keep that steady and consistent, as long as you're doing it with good posture and the right technique, those kind of things are really good. But, I think number one is to keep up on all the things that we've been communicating through our dryland program and the kind of extra videos that we've been providing. That's number one. Then number two, something cross-country skiing would be great, or snowshoeing, or like I said, the rowing machine for indoors is fantastic for swimmers. Okay. Number two, talking about when we are allowed to get back in and we get things going, the in-house MAC meet was a suggestion, and certainly we're looking forward to doing that as soon as we can. But Swim Ontario has a detailed framework that lays out when we can do that, and it's time-based. There's certain criterias, and we'll certainly be able to do that.
이거 어떡하려고 그래?
Oh, someone with an iPhone.
빨리 들어왔다 또 나가.
There we go. I can mute you. So that'll be kind of, once we get underway and we get the green light from Swim Ontario and we go through that process, then we can do that. And I really like that idea for a number of reasons. We were considering doing that already, where we would match up, kind of have a blue and gold night and match up some of the older swimmers and younger swimmers and get that cross-pollination. So very, very good idea. And that's something that we will do when we're ready to do that, or when we get permission. Okay. Number three, there was a note about the club historically has had a very, very positive, very beneficial relationship with the community. And there was a comment here in the past. I remember that we donated a portion of money raised from a swim challenge to Markham Stouffville Hospital. We've donated wrap toys for children at Christmas time with a toy drive, and that different MAC groups have organized different fundraisings and donations for other causes like a food bank. So, boy, I really like that. And I think that conversation can get started. Not only is it team building, it's also branding. It's also, connecting the community with the organization. So obviously with certain protocols right now that we're very limited in what we can do, but certainly that's something that, I would like to see us do. One of the first things I did when I went to my previous club was that I encouraged as many people as we could to go out and do the Terry Fox run. And we all wore our team gear. It was a good, first of all, it's a great cause. And number two, it was a way for us to connect with the community and also get our name out and our branding, our image out. So I'm totally up for that. Sounds great. Okay, one question in the chat here. What food does the ideal swimmer diet include? So this is a constant topic of conversation that coaches have with swimmers, and I'm sure, parents as well, but usually means more if it's coming from the coach, or in my case, the hockey coach with my son. And, I guess the best advice, number one, is to make sure that you have a really well-rounded diet, and that the more color in your diet, the better, okay? I know there's certain people that are very high on protein-rich diets, and, you get a lot of those fads, a lot of those diets that are coming around, but the best thing I can recommend right away is that you have a really well-balanced diet, very colorful food, so you're getting a lot of, anything leafy green, vegetable, not processed, anything that's kind of raw is fantastic, right? The further down the processing line that we go, where there's, things added and it's packaged and sugar and salt and all that stuff. That's the worst thing that we can do. And I know that a lot of times there's a convenience factor, but if you're talking about the consistency factor of diet, it's massive. It's massive. Having gone through a bit of health issues in the last few years, I was able to get a little more information, a little bit more knowledge surrounding sugar and diabetes, and also with regards to blood transfusions. And, you know, in the past, some of you know I had a kidney transplant, and I would say that 75% of the people that were in on the dialysis days were there because of diabetes. Now, certainly, you know, diet plays a huge part in diabetes, and I was just overwhelmed with how many people that were there because of diabetes. I mean, you always hear the word, but it never really hit me until I actually saw it at the dialysis unit. And that was really fantastic to learn about how sugar, you know, affects your nerve endings, and how sugar can, you know, take away your sight, and, you know, combined with stress, just so many things that sugar can do in such a bad way that, you know, it really opened my eyes. So I'm getting off topic a little bit, but with regards to the food for the ideal swimmer, I think number one is balanced, colorful, and non-processed. I think that'd be my best advice. And I'm just going to say, I'm not a nutritionist. I don't have any qualifications to, you know, to kind of stand behind in terms of that. But I think if you take that information, you do your due diligence, you'll kind of see where I'm coming from. And the other thing that, you know, I'll just kind of spin off that a little bit is, number one, when the swimmers are going 6, 7, 8 times a week, they're going to eat a lot, right? And so a lot of times I find that the athletes are eating really well, but not enough. And they cannot compare what they eat to what normal school mates would be eating, because their exercise routine, the caloric burn that they have is far different than the average teenager or the average child. So good stuff, and then make sure you're having enough of it, okay? And the third part of that is enough water, okay? One of the things that is used to determine the health and quality of my kidney, right, because I get that tested often, is something called creatinine levels. And the creatinine levels can, basically, the higher the creatinine, the worse your kidney's going, and the lower the better. And just by water intake alone, you can change that result in the score by about 20%. So sometimes I've gone and got my blood taken, and they've said, well, it's a little bit high. Have you been doing anything extra? And I tell them about my weekend. I went up north and I cut wood and I did this, and I was all over the property. And they go, oh, well, okay, did you drink enough? I said, well, no, I was kind of working and didn't really pay much attention to that. And they said, come back in 3 days when you've drank enough water. And they'd give me a target of, say, I don't know, 3 to 6 liters of water per day. And I'd come back and it would dramatically alter my score. So a good rule of thumb is, before you sit down and have anything else with your supper, is to have a glass of water before you have your supper. And then if you're going to have milk or juice or anything like that, you can have that added on. Okay, hopefully that answers your question to some degree of satisfaction. Most recently, we donate a portion of the funds raised through the gift card program to Markham Food Bank. Oh, okay, there we go. So we already are currently giving back. Next question: when the pool reopens, hopefully in 2 weeks, will it be another phased approach, or will it open to full capacity right away? We haven't had confirmation of that yet. My understanding is it will go back to how we left it and fit in the red phase. So barring any changes to that, I've kind of been pestering the people at MPAC for more information, and you know, they're very quick to respond, and they're really great cooperating with us. They just don't know all the answers. They're kind of waiting for their superiors to answer that. But we do currently have a situation where the mayor is very conservative and worried about, you know, what possibly can happen. So I think the restraints are going to be pretty tight. Right now, I would say that we're going to go back to, you know, 4 per lane, but don't quote me on that. We've got to wait. Okay, keep your questions coming, guys, or it's going to be short. Okay. And Benny, I'm just going to mute you. There we go. Okay. So one thing I wanted to piggyback on, and keep your questions coming. I'm just going to talk about this one little subject. You know, I've spoken a lot about middle distance free and IM training. And previously I talked about how it was important in event selection to balance the events and why they were important. A little deeper on the reason why that we believe in that middle distance background training, okay, is there's a huge amount of physiological changes that go into when you do things like, you know, 4/400s of pulling, or you do a time 1500 or 15/100s. When you do more of that endurance-based aerobic style training, it has a number of really good benefits that are very long-lasting. Okay, number one, if you imagine the muscle cell, or most of the cells in your body, but we'll talk about the muscle cells. The power plants inside those muscles are the mitochondria, right? So if you kind of visualize the muscle cell and there's a few dots that are pointed inside that muscle cell, those are all mitochondria. When you do aerobic training, inside the muscle cell, you increase the amount of mitochondria. So the more energy producing power plants we have in the muscle is good for everybody, right? So those mitochondria that are producing energy, even if you're typically a sprinter, say 200 and down, the more mitochondria you have, the more mitochondria that are pumping out energy, okay? So regardless of whether you're an endurance, you know, say 8, 1500 or open water swimmer, or a middle distance, 200, 400, or sprint 2, 1, and 50, that is really important. The cardiovascular side of the aerobic training has everything to do with your heart, lungs, and circulatory system, okay? The fitter and more efficient that is, you have a better pathway and a bigger highway to bring energy and oxygen and nutrients to your muscle cells when you're exercising. So when you're in a race, the more aerobically fit you are, the bigger your arteries are, the bigger your heart gets, right? Over time, when athletes are growing and developing, this aerobic training not only builds the number of mitochondria in your muscle cells, it builds the size of your heart, the strength of your heart, the fitness of your heart, and that has lasting effects for decades. With that heart, lungs, and circulatory system being improved, your lungs have got a greater capacity, so the more oxygen that's delivered to your muscles, the farther you can go before you start tiring out. So even if you're a sprinter and you're doing a long course 100, the aerobic content or the oxygen content that goes into that race is a lot greater, so that you don't use that anaerobic system, which is what really tightens you up, and lactic acidosis, and, you know, you're tightening up at the end of the races. That delays that pushes that much longer. So even in a 100 freestyler or a 100 flyer, the aerobic content is very important. The other side of that too is that the better your heart, lungs, and circulatory system are, it develops more blood vessels around your muscle cell, okay? And what that's really important for, so now you've got more highways that are delivering energy and oxygen to your muscle cell. You also have greater veins that are, right, more of those small structures that are taking byproducts out of the muscle cell and taking that back to get processed. So if you imagine a sink, when you're racing, you put on both taps full out. The analogy is, if you're an undertrained swimmer and you don't have a really good heart, lungs, and circulatory system, you have a really narrow hole in the sink and a really narrow tube. So you can turn on those taps and have it blasting, but your sink's filling up really fast. And that would be the same as you're getting tired really fast. In aerobic training, we're making that sink bigger, but we're also making that drain bigger and the pipe bigger, so that we can turn on those taps full blast, and we're going to have better drainage. We're going to have a bigger capacity, and we're also going to have a bigger drainage out that pipe, so that we don't get the backup as soon as possible. The further benefit of that is that when you swim heats, semifinals, and finals, or you're swimming 2 events a day plus relays over 3 days, your recovery speed's a lot faster when you're aerobically fit. So someone who just does ultra short race pace training, they can't do it and do it and do it and do it and come back and do it and do it. They're really good for one bout, but they're not really seasoned or fit enough to be able to come back and be able to do it on successive sessions. And as you know, as you get more aware of the world of swimming, there are several levels that you go through. So at the highest levels, you know, you have heats, and then you have semifinals, and then you have finals. And so that process of multiple swims is really going to be dictated by how fit you are. Okay. All right. So there's my little physiological explanation today. But the other consideration for parents and swimmers to understand is that that doesn't happen in just 2 or 3 months. There's an aerobic window that takes years to build. And as you go from being 9 to 10 to 11 to 12 to 13, you're building that. And that whole time period, when you're going from 9 to 13 or 14 or 15, not only you're physically getting bigger, but everything inside is getting bigger. Your heart, lungs are getting bigger. Your inner organs are growing. Your blood volume, how much blood you have in the body, is growing. Okay. And then when we talk about the benefits of aerobic training transferring into the size of your heart, the efficiency of your heart, the vascularization of your body, right? More arteries, more veins. So more of those systems to deliver energy and to deliver power and to also take away waste products. Okay, next question. When does practice begin again? Well, we're not sure yet. Like we said at the beginning here, we've got a 2-week push currently past when they reopen in York region, so we'll let you know. Next question, what are the key character traits that make swimmers successful? A few. I think one is what I call stick-to-itiveness, right, or persistence or grit, that kind of that approach, because we're really looking at a long-term process. It's not people that jump forward right away. It's not a quick kind of investment and quick payoff. It's like putting a little money in the bank, every week, every month, putting a little more, putting a little more, putting a little more, and you build that up over time. So I think the consistency factor of being diligent and being able to kind of stick to it is really, really valuable. And the side kind of context or discussion off that is that really enjoying that process. Because this is a sport of repetition, you have to really enjoy what you're doing and find the fun in the everyday workout, drill, skill development, and be able to really enjoy that process. Because as I said, it's a repeating process. So that kind of, I would say that would be the one character trait, the stick-to-itiveness, and that kind of approach is very, very important. And then you got me thinking, there's just so many more that are important, but I think if you don't have that stick-to-itiveness and that dedication to what you're doing, people fall off at the first kind of sign of challenge or difficulty or conflict. And so that makes me think, it doesn't matter how diligent you are, if it's only for, 1 or 2 times a month. It's more about being consistent every day, every month, just kind of going through that. What do you think is the most important race/performance in Canadian swimming history, and why? That's pretty good. I still don't think you can get too far away from the '84 Olympics with having 3 of our swimmers win gold. So if it was one race or performance, it's got to be Alex Bauman's 400 IM in 1984. He broke the world record, won the gold medal, and he came off of shoulder surgery. Those of you that don't know the story of Alex Bauman, came from Sudbury. He actually spent a little bit of time in Indiana University, but found that didn't really work that well for him. So he came back home and joined up with his childhood coach, Dr. Yeno Tahani, and they did that. And I think at that time, that was a pretty significant performance in swimming history. The why part of that, I think because of what I said in terms of overcoming those obstacles, he didn't need to do it in the US. He came home to Ontario and was able to do it. And it wasn't just winning in the '84 Olympics when the communist countries weren't there. It was winning in world record time, right? And did that in those scenarios. So he did it by himself. He did it, from Northern Ontario. He did it overcoming shoulder surgery. All those kind of things, to me, reinforce that Canadians can win anytime, anywhere, under any circumstances. When you coach 12 and unders, how did you coach the swimmers to fit the next group or level? I always tried to get my kids to beat the kids that were in the group above. I wanted them to be better skilled, more disciplined, tougher, be able to outwork them in the last 50. So I think it's a good thing when you've got the top 10% of one group that can actually overlap or maybe even beat the lower level, the lower 10% of the group above. Because the idea is that when you're in a leadership position in that group in the top 10% and you're leading lanes and you're building confidence from doing things in practice that maybe some of your group mates aren't able to do, there's a time to learn to be a leader and be able to have that confidence built, because then you move up to the next group and you get a good challenge, and maybe you're working your way up to the bottom 25%, and that's good. That's part of the ebb and flow of learning to be a leader and then learning to be a chaser, right? And both are important. When does practicing begin again? That's the same question twice. I can't answer that right now. How is the training going with Max swimmers preparing for Olympic trials? Very well. I just had a conference call with them last night to compliment them and kind of get them to realize how good that group is and what they're doing. We've talked in pretty much every broadcast how that group is very thankful for the opportunity that they've been given. But last night I wanted to make sure, because we don't get a lot of time to talk on deck, it's very regimented on the pool deck, and we're kind of strongly encouraged to leave as soon as we're done. So I wanted to spend 20 minutes talking to them to show them, like for example, I think we have 5 girls that are pulling under, is it 430? I think 5 girls pulling under 430, 4 or 5 girls that are going under 940 in practice in the 800, with several girls going under a minute. And, we've got 2 gentlemen that are in the group, and they're doing good things as well. But I would say that it's hard to look at that group and not be impressed and how well they're going to do in the future. I think they're really going to represent Markham very well, and it will be a very surprising branding kind of realization when we get the chance to kind of show our colors and get up and race. So I'm quite proud of them. I was pretty hard on them today, but just detailed stuff. And that's important for the young kids to know. Even though we've got professional athletes and we've got adults that are attending university, the demand is very high on them, and I don't allow or accept mediocre efforts or so-so techniques and skills. And that's part of me being there for them, right? That's part of coaching. It's not being a nag or being hard on them. It's being tough on them so that they're just going to be better athletes. The other thing about the 11 and 12s, while I'm waiting for the next question, the other thing about coaching 11 and 12s I really enjoyed was the all-rounded approach and being able to get them to do their first 400 or do their first 800 or 200 fly, and seeing that development, seeing them build confidence and smile on that. Because I think 11 and 12s, they've got such an open mind, and they're really like, yeah, what's next, coach? What's next? I really want to do this. And they just bring an energy to the practice that's so fun and exciting. Everything's new to them. Everything's surprising. So I think that you can really make, if you're 11 and 12 or under listening to this broadcast, it's amazing how far you can go in a year. It's amazing how much you can learn and how fast you can improve just by being there, being attentive, being a student of the sport, working hard and perfecting your skills. It's a great age group. Do we have any other questions, maybe from some of the parents? This is going to be a short episode if we don't have any more questions. Going once. Swimmers you can put your questions in here too. Albert, you must have a question. Andrew, Lynn, you must have a question. Okay. What's my favorite part about coaching, or what makes you happiest when coaching? My favorite part about coaching is moving the athletes to a new level and being able to realize things they've done in practice. So typically it will be 4, 5, 6 months beforehand that you see the athlete doing things in practice that you know can lead to a result, which is whatever. And sometimes you need to go and race it and make a couple mistakes and you come back and like it's all there. But you know, I said to the athletes, I think yesterday, the part of practice, attending, working hard, good attitude, learning, is pretty simple. And so, you know, you log 4,000 meters and you have 5 practices a week and you get your 20,000 meters in every week and you're diligent about that. But the competitive side is where the human part of it comes in. It's not just about, I've done this many meters and this many practices. It's about the psyche, you know, how they're feeling in their mind, right? Do they think that they're ready to go? Does it feel right? Like that feel thing is terrible. You can never trust feel. Feel will always lie to you. Now, swimmers, I'll give you an example. How many of you dove into practice and you go through warm up and you're just flying and it feels like you're barely trying? It just feels light, easy, and you're just going so fast, right? That's a feel thing, but you didn't try very hard. And how many swimmers went into a race and it felt so fast, and then you looked at the clock going, oh, that wasn't that fast. Or the other way around. That was really, really, you know, say the effort was really, really easy, but you went super fast, right? Feel is deceptive. The clock won't lie to you. Okay, I got distracted here. I had to go back to the question to remember what we were talking about. My favorite part about coaching. Yeah, getting to that point where, you know, you move athletes through a really good training phase and then seeing them realize it. You know, I think Mabel touched on this on the very first What's Up Wednesday, was that I told her she could go under 210, you know, months before it happened. And although she positively heard, and okay, that's good, that'd be great, but didn't kind of feel that she was there yet or believe that it would happen. And then when it did, it was a real good realization, right? So I think that's a really cool part of working with athletes and getting them to that level. So that's my favorite part. I love the process of getting them to do things that they never could do before and then see that in the race, right? What makes you happiest when coaching? I think when a group really comes together and they're fired up, they're working really hard, they're doing really well, they're supporting each other, and the workout's just humming, and everybody's kind of up, you know, and there's a lot of energy, and it's really, really good. I think that's one of my favorite times, and I think that, you know, just being on deck and hearing the water and seeing people being so positive and contributing, that I'd say that's probably it. What age should swimmers specialize, if they should at all? Okay. So specialization, and we touched on this in terms of the all-round development portion. And if I go back to Mabel for a second, even her weekly training program includes IM-based training. There's some distance in there, and she's also done some, you know, 350s dive on 3 minutes, which is pretty high rest, high quality. Today we did 16:25s on a minute. That was best mini maxi stroke count plus time. And that's sheer speed work, right? And 14 seconds of work and, you know, 46 seconds of rest. It's pretty good. So I think it's important that, you know, from my style and my belief of training, that there's always a component of all-roundedness. Because if every day was fly, one, I'd get bored. And number two, I'm pretty sure that she'd get bored and frustrated. There's only so many ways you can slice an onion. So I think that specialization, you're always going to have your better events. They might change as you get older, but you're always going to have your stronger events. So if I go down and watch Coach Wayne's group, you know, I can see who can swim breaststroke really well. That's, you know, and I can tell that's one of their best events. and that may be their strongest event, but we're still going to keep up on those other events. So to answer your question along about way, our responsibility as an age group club is to make you all rounded and fit enough so that you're really ready for university. Arguably 16, 17, you're starting to specialize, but even our 17-year-olds coming out of the program will be well-rounded, can swim 400 IM and 800 free. Like I said a couple episodes ago, Dylan Scholes is targeted on the national youth team or ID team or whatever they call it for the 100 back, but she's also gone 9:15 or 9:13 long course 800 free, just because she's fit, and she'll probably crush that sometime in the future. So I think, the one exception to that, and I say exception, we're still going to work on the other things, is true breaststrokers. And true breaststrokers will always be kind of a little different. They walk with their feet out. You can see it as soon as they walk on the deck, they walk like this. And so those swimmers, yes, they stand out right away because it's a really, if you're a true breaststroker, you're a little different breed. Okay? But even the breaststrokers, like I had a world championship bronze medalist, and she could do 400 IM, 800 free. And that's why she was third in the world. She outswam everybody in the last 10 meters and beat the world record holder. Next question, what's your favorite part about coach? Oh, we did that one already. How come that came up again? What's the best advice that you would give your swimmers prior to competing? I'm going to say competing, not completing, right? Competing at Olympic trials. My advice is going to be very short and sweet. It will be a couple of notes, right? Hit your stroke on the first 3 strokes off the wall. It'll be something really sharp. Storm the finish, tough as nails, and then I'll end off. Enjoy this, right? I'm proud of you. Have fun. Anything like that will have, and all of that's true. Even I'll say it today, and that'll be what we'll say when it's Olympic trials, or more importantly, at the Olympics, right? Is that, we don't want to think that the trials are the end. The trials are a stepping stone to the Olympics. So that would be my advice, right? By that point, all the work's been done, and all the swimmers at that level are amazing athletes, and they've worked hard, and it will be the ones that have the mental capacity, sharpness, to stay calm, stay focused, and enjoy the process. Doesn't mean they're not going to be nervous. It's just to use those nerves as free energy, and it's a smiley, positive, keep it that way. When you aren't having a good practice, what should you do to overcome it? So I think we come back to one is attitude and effort. If your attitude is good, even if you're having a bad day, right, you can still bring a good attitude and a good effort. And I've seen several swimmers in my group just in this season that have started practice poorly, whether they've had a rotten day, whether they just don't feel good in the water. Again, feel is irrelevant. It's invisible. You can't pay attention to that, but it does affect your mood. So then I encourage them, work yourself in it. Come back, try again. Come back, try again. Okay. There was a set that we did, I think it was 20 times 400 for Alex, and he missed one of the things that we were trying to target, and we gave him 20 seconds rest, and let's get back on it. And he crushed it and went 409 in the last 400, right? So he was able to reset and get back on task. Next one. How do you engage, network with other coaches, and what do you talk about? I think I'm one of the most plugged in coaches probably in Canada. I'm lucky enough to have Coach Bob Bowman that likes all my posts on Facebook and follows on Twitter and stuff like that. But I've always been one to not be afraid to reach out and talk to coaches about what they think, what they're doing. Very often I'm talking to one of the retired coaches in the Hall of Fame, Paul Bergen, and getting his perspective, a guy that's coached since the 60s, and he's long since retired now, but I engage and network with him all the time. The set that Alex did, that 2400 set, I sent it to a coach in Australia, and this guy is a famous Australian coach, multiple world records, and Olympic gold medals. And, he responded back to me that evening. And, so I think that's a real strength to be able to draw upon all these experiences from different coaches, and you take what you like and you filter it, and then you use your own brand moving forward. And I'd like to think that other coaches do that with me too. What do we talk about? We talk about accomplishments in practice. We talk about this swimmer or that swimmer, what they're doing. And, that's, I know one set that Katrina Bellio did in Etobicoke maybe a month ago. It was pretty cool. And I know what Summer McIntosh went, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And, it's good. Information is good, and knowing what's fast, knowing what's, holy cow, Alex Axon went 2400s and this is what he did. And whatever, we don't broadcast that too much. But who's your most successful swimmer under your coaching? Well, pure results would be Lauren Van Oosten with the bronze medal at World Championships and the Canadian record. That it's kind of definitive, but I'm not sure I'm going to classify it as the most successful swimmer, because I think there's a few in the pool right now. And I'm not going to single anyone out right now, but I think that's, if we're just looking at, pure performance, and it would be Lauren Van Oosten, 108.8 in 1998, and that would have been fifth at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. What's a coach's most important part of the job? What's the coach's most important part of the job? Boy, that's a good one. You're almost stumping me. I would say to effectively utilize, and this is all in the most positive sense of the word, and leverage all the assets around you. To be able to effectively cooperate, communicate, and coordinate, did I say that already? With important board members that have a skill set that they can really make a certain portion of the program work so that it really helps the whole program, and be able to have this person with that skill set, right? Have someone like Jason Kubrick in the physiotherapy department be able to assist, or John, right? And be able to utilize the strengths of Carter and be able to offset that with mine, right? And be able to have that team that really completes the product that we can deliver to Markham. I think that's probably, because nobody can do it on their own, right? I mean, it's impossible. It doesn't matter if we have the best treasurer in the world, but have a lousy board or a lousy coaching staff, or, that sort of thing. I think it's really utilizing everyone's talents and being able to put those in the right areas. I would say that's probably it. Any other questions? I think if we're just looking at that question in a different light, what is a coach's most important part of the job? If we're just talking about the coach to swimmer dynamic, is being able to have something with legacy, right? To be able to have an impact on that swimmer's life that pointed them in the right direction, changed their mindset in a positive way, made them feel better about themselves. In some way, you affected that person's life in a positive way. I had one of my original coaches die last year, sadly. And at the time, when I swam for him, I really didn't like him. He was, you could say he picked favorites. I remember swimming the 1500 in Winnipeg, and he was sitting in a chair reading the newspaper when I was swimming the 1500, and I was really mad. It made me swim pretty fast, actually. I was really mad that he wouldn't get off his butt and be able to kind of wave me on. And as a swimmer, I really didn't enjoy him very much. But the day he announced that he was leaving, our whole group was crying, including me. I was maybe 12 or 13 years old or 14 years old. And I look back on that going, even though at the time I didn't enjoy what he was doing, he was pretty tough. but we respected that. We respected how tough he was and how he had really high demands, and we were really sad when he left. And later on in life, I connected with him on a coach-to-coach level, and it was one of the best relationships. I loved talking to him. He was a very, very funny guy to talk in coaches' terms as adults, and had some great stories, most of which I probably can't tell on this communication, but he had an impact on my life. And then the coach that followed him, Blair Tucker, coaches in Ottawa. Blair came in, and he was a different kind of tough, but he kicked everybody's backside. He motivated everybody, no matter if you were a great swimmer, poor swimmer. And that's a lot of my philosophy as a coach is based on what Blair did. It was about attitude and work ethic. And boy, did we work. I mean, I remember going a 7,000 meter Saturday morning practice. Then we got on the bus, maybe it was Friday morning practice. Then we got on the bus and drove 5 hours to Thunder Bay, and we raced Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. Then we got back on the bus, dead of winter, Northwestern Ontario, 6-foot snowbanks, and coming back 1, 2 in the morning. We're going, up, down the hills, around the curves, and all of a sudden, something went wrong with the bus. It's a story time with Sean now. And the accelerator stuck full speed on the bus. So you got a bus full of children, chaperones, coach, and the bus would go minus 40 out, by the way. And the bus would start gaining momentum and getting faster and faster and up to 100 kilometers an hour and 110, 120. And the bus driver, to control the bus, would turn the ignition off. And at that time, in the 80s, all the lights would go out, and we'd be going 110, 120 kilometers an hour in Northwestern Ontario with the rock cuts and the big hills. And then when he'd slow down to 80 or 75, we'd turn the ignition back on, back we'd go. It was quite a time. And that's back before cell phones. So you weren't going to stop the bus and sit on the side of the road in minus 40, because it's 3 hours till you get to the next town. So anyway, my point, getting back to Kenora, we get off the bus because it was about 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. We got back. We trained. We went into the pool, and at the good old days, Blair had a key for the pool. We didn't need a lifeguard. Opened the pool, we swam 5,000, and then our parents picked us up, and then we went to school. Well, sometimes we didn't go to school. But anyway, that was how that impact of coaches really impacted me. Okay, all that time talking, no one's put another question forward. So unless there's one more, we're going to sign off and have a good weekend. Again, if we have any changes with information, I know we're all dying. I mean, we're trying to push the envelope to get this pool opened as soon as we can. We'll let you know if we're successful, but stay with it, and we'll let you know as soon as we know. Okay, no more questions. Fire Away Friday's coming to an end. You're welcome, guys. Bye for now, guys. Have a good weekend.